My daughter didn't even realize she hadn't hung up the phone. I heard the familiar clatter of her bag, the soft hum of airport air vents, the shuffle of hurried footsteps. I was about to place my receiver back in its cradle when a voice, my own daughter's voice, cut through the static. "Jeremy, he forgot to turn the stove off again. I swear, he's getting worse every week." I froze, half standing, half leaning on the chair. The soft warmth I always felt after hearing from her vanished as cleanly as breath on a mirror. For a moment I thought she was talking to someone else, another elderly parent, maybe a neighbor. But then Jeremy's voice entered, calm, smooth, polished with that corporate charm he loved so much. "It's time, Kate," he said. "He can't keep living alone. He's slipping. We need to think about a facility. A real one. Something safe, and convenient." Convenient. The word scraped across my chest like sandpaper. "I know," Caitlin sighed. "He's becoming a burden. And you heard him earlier. He sounded confused. He thought the coffee burner turned itself off. What if he burns the house down? Then what?" I stood there in my quiet kitchen, the old fridge humming behind me, my wife's photograph sitting on the counter with her favorite sunflower frame catching the light. I stared at her smile, at the eyes that had softened every hard day of my life. And as my daughter's words echoed in my ear, something inside me buckled, not the way you bend for love, but the way a beam breaks from too much weight. Jeremy lowered his voice, just enough to show he felt comfortable saying what came next. "The house is worth a fortune now. Denver's market is insane. We could sell it, put him somewhere decent enough, and have money left over for a down payment in Boulder. You know, that place near Flatiron we liked. With the mountain view." "Oh God, yes," Caitlin breathed, excitement overtaking concern within seconds. "Jeremy, I've been dreaming about that house. And Dad trusts me completely. He'll sign anything if I tell him it's for his own good." Her laugh, light, sweet, and sharp enough to cut me open, filled my ear. "He has no idea what we're planning." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the hardwood floor. My wife and I sanded ourselves the summer Caitlin turned 9. I felt my knees weaken, but my body didn't fall. Instead, I sank slowly into Ellen's old chair, the one still molded to her shape after years of her nighttime reading. My pulse roared in my ears like distant thunder. They were planning to get rid of me. Not gently. Not kindly. Not because they feared for my safety. Because I was a burden standing between them and their dream house. The grandfather clock in the hall clicked forward, steady, unbothered, unaware it had just marked the exact moment my world split open. Outside my kitchen window, the spring evening deepened, shadows stretching across Ellen's old garden beds. The roses she planted were barely budding, reaching for the last hints of sunlight. She'd loved those roses. Said they were stubborn survivors, just like her. My hands curled into fists on my lap. I had never felt old until tonight. I had never felt unwanted until my own daughter's voice carved the truth into me. A burden. A problem. A saleable asset. I don't know how long I sat there in the growing dark. Ellen's framed photo stared back at me from the mantel, her eyes warm, understanding, almost urging me to rise. We built this home together, every nail, every beam, every tile laid with sweat and sacrifice. And now my daughter wanted to sell it from under me like it was nothing more than a line item on her spreadsheet. "I'm sorry, Ellen," I whispered. "I promised you I'd stand tall. I promised you I'd take care of myself." My voice shook, anger, heartbreak, something rawer than both. I lifted myself from the chair slowly, feeling decades of memories press in on me from every direction. This house wasn't just wood and stone. It was my marriage. My triumphs. The place where my daughter took her first steps. Where Ellen and I danced barefoot in the kitchen on our 20th anniversary. Where I'd held my wife's frail hand during her final night, promising her I would not let grief swallow me whole. And yet here I was, seconds from being discarded like spoiled leftovers. I walked to the old file cabinet tucked behind the living room bookshelf. Inside it, under folders labeled with fading ink, taxes 2005, insurance 1999, mortgage finalized, I found the one Ellen always said we might need someday. Important papers. I pulled it out and placed it on the dining table. Inside were 2 decades worth of receipts, warranties, contractor invoices, and the original deed to the house, with only my name on it. Ellen and I had paid off the mortgage early, working overtime, sacrificing vacations, tightening our belts through lean years. We built everything we had, including the ungrateful child who now wanted to sell me off like old furniture. I flipped through the folder slowly, touching each paper as if to absorb some strength from the ink. Tuition receipts. $12,000 a year for 4 years. Car loan co-sign documents. Credit card payments I'd made for her during college. The wedding invoice, $32,000 I had scraped together by taking weekend jobs and selling my boat. I remembered Caitlin crying the night I told her I couldn't afford the wedding she wanted. "Daddy, please. I want this day to be perfect." Her head had rested against my chest, her tears dampening my shirt. I gave in then. And again. And again. And again. Until there was nothing left to give. I sat back, exhaustion settling into my bones. I wasn't angry yet. Shock had built a wall around me, but deep inside something was slowly shifting, something cold, deliberate, razor-sharp. They thought they were clever. They thought I was slow, confused, pliable. But I wasn't dying. And I wasn't helpless. And I sure as hell wasn't going to a nursing home so they could sip wine on a Mountain View patio bought with the rubble of my life. I looked again at Ellen's picture. "You always said they'd forget, didn't you?" I whispered. "You warned me she was getting spoiled." The photograph didn't answer, but her eyes seemed sadder than I remembered. I reached for the business card Ellen tucked into her recipe box years ago. An attorney she liked, someone she said was trustworthy. A man named Richard Turner. Real estate and estate law. I'd kept it without thinking. But now its edges pressed against my palm like the edge of a blade. I picked up the phone. "Mr. Turner's office," a cheerful voice chimed. "How may we help you today?" I swallowed, steadying myself. "My name is Roy Bennett," I said slowly. "I need to talk to Mr. Turner. It's about selling my home." There was a pause, a brief, curious silence, before the receptionist replied warmly. "We can fit you in tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt since Ellen died. Strength. Not angry strength. Just the quiet, unshakable certainty that I was about to reclaim my dignity one signature at a time. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every corner of the house whispered stories to me. Caitlin's childhood giggles, Ellen humming while she cooked, the rustle of holiday gatherings long gone. But beneath the nostalgia there lay a new, electric pulse. A plan forming, piece by piece, like the houses I used to build. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd go quietly. But tomorrow, everything would change. And they would never see it coming. Morning sunlight spilled across my kitchen table in long golden stripes, landing on the spread-out documents like they were pieces of evidence in a case I hadn't realized I'd been building for years. I didn't sleep much the night before, but somehow I woke with a clear mind, clearer than it had been since Ellen died. The hurt was still there, lodged deep under my ribs, but now it had hardened into something useful. Determination. Purpose. A sense of rightful reclaiming. I showered, shaved, put on the navy blazer Ellen had always said made me look distinguished, and drove to Richard Turner's office. The building was a modest beige structure on a quiet street, with a low fountain outside that trickled softly in the cool morning air. It didn't scream power or prestige, but it whispered trustworthiness. The sort of place where real problems were solved without theatrics. The receptionist, a woman with silver hair and a professional smile, greeted me warmly. "Mr. Bennett, you're right on time. Mr. Turner is finishing up a call. Please make yourself comfortable." I took a seat on a leather chair near the window. My knee bounced out of habit, a leftover tic from years of job site stress, but it wasn't nerves. It was anticipation. The kind that sits in your chest like a coiled spring. After a few minutes, Richard Turner stepped into the lobby. He looked older than I remembered, maybe mid-60s now, but his handshake was firm, his eyes sharp. He was the sort of man who listened carefully, not because he had to, but because it was in his nature to gather every detail before he acted. "Roy," he said kindly, "it's been far too long. I was sorry to hear about Ellen." "Thank you," I murmured. "She thought highly of you." He gave a small nod and guided me into his office. Books lined every wall, thick volumes on property, wills, probate, subjects people only care about when life forces their hand. He settled into his chair and folded his hands on the desk. "So, tell me what brings you here." I inhaled deeply and told him everything. Not with bitterness, but with the calm tone of a man presenting facts. The overheard phone call. The plans Caitlin and Jeremy had made behind my back. The nursing home. The intention to sell my house and use the money for their dream life. Turner didn't interrupt. He didn't even blink. But his jaw tightened fractionally the moment I said the word, burden. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "I've been an attorney for 40 years, he said. "And I've seen many forms of betrayal, but hearing your fatherhood reduced to real estate equity never gets easier." I nodded silently. He leaned back. "Let's talk logistics. The house is in your name alone, correct?" "Yes." "No power of attorney assigned to your daughter?" "No." "Any liens? Reverse mortgages? Complications?" "None," I said. "Paid it off early. Ellen and I worked too hard to owe anybody anything." Turner smiled faintly. "You two were always a team." "We were," I said softly. He tapped his pen against the desk. "Roy, legally speaking, your daughter has zero authority over your property. She cannot sell it. She cannot force you into a nursing home. She cannot touch your finances without written consent. You are in complete control. Fully." The words hit me like wind after being underwater. I'd known it, logically. But hearing it said aloud by a legal professional felt like someone had removed a 100-pound weight from my shoulders. "Now," he continued, "you mentioned wanting to sell the home yourself." "Yes," I said firmly. "Are you certain?" "It's a major decision. A permanent one." "I'm certain," I said. "More certain than I've been about anything in a long time." He nodded approvingly. "Then we'll need a real estate agent, preferably someone specializing in rapid, high-value sales." "I've done my research," I said, sliding a paper across the desk with a name written on it. "Brian Lang. Quick turnover specialist. Top sales in Cherry Creek and Hillcrest." Turner smiled. "Efficient already, I see. I'll draft the necessary preliminary paperwork today. Contact Mr. Lang and begin preparations." We spent the next hour going through forms, disclosures, representation agreements, a preliminary questionnaire about the property. Turner explained every detail in plain language, making sure I understood exactly what each signature meant. I appreciated that. After years of signing things for Caitlin without thinking, it felt good to reclaim my thoroughness. When we finished, he stood and shook my hand with surprising warmth. "Roy, I want you to know something. You're not doing something spiteful. You're protecting yourself. As you should." I nodded, emotion tightening my throat unexpectedly. "Thank you for saying that." Outside, sunlight glinted off the hood of my truck. The world seemed sharper, clearer, like winter frost melting into spring. I took out my phone and dialed the number I'd written down the night before. "Lang Real Estate Group," a woman answered brightly. "How can I direct your call?" "I'd like to speak to Brian Lang," I said. "One moment." A brief pause, then a smooth, confident voice came on the line. "This is Brian." "Mr. Lang, my name is Roy Bennett. I'd like to sell my house. As soon as possible." There was a slight pause, just long enough for him to adjust mentally to the urgency, but his tone remained fluid. "Absolutely, Mr. Bennett. I'm available this afternoon. Are you home?" "Yes." "Excellent. I can be there at 3. Is that all right?" "Perfect. Then I'll see you soon." I hung up and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I spent the next 2 hours walking through my house slowly, room by room, memory by memory. I didn't do it to mourn, I'd mourned enough. I did it to remember what this place once meant, before it became a prize in someone else's strategy. The smell of Ellen's lavender satchel still lingered faintly in the closet. Caitlin's first spelling trophies sat dusty on a shelf. My old drafting table stood in the corner of the basement, The place where I had drawn the original floor plan for this house with nothing but a pencil and a dream. At exactly 3 o'clock, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Brian Lang stepped out, a tall man in a tailored suit, carrying a leather tablet case and radiating the kind of polished energy only people deeply familiar with success seem to have. He greeted me with a firm handshake and an easy smile. "Mr. Bennett, it's a pleasure." Inside, he walked the property with the eyes of a man who could see dollar signs in shadows. But he was respectful, never rushed, never dismissive. He admired the craftsmanship, asked questions about upgrades, commented on the exceptional condition of everything. "You don't see homes like this often," he said after completing the tour. "Not ones maintained this meticulously. You've taken incredible care of this place." "I built most of it myself," I replied simply. He raised his eyebrows. "Well, that explains it." He sat with me at the kitchen table and opened his tablet. "Mr. Bennett, in this neighborhood, with this level of care and custom work, we're looking at a listing price between $870,000 and $900,000. My chest tightened slightly. I already knew the number, but hearing it this plainly, this confidently, made it feel real. "And," Brian continued, "I have investors who look for exactly this type of property. We could get offers within 24 hours. "Let's do it," I said. He blinked once, surprised by my decisiveness, then grinned. "I like your style." We spent the next 45 minutes signing early listing documents, discussing timelines, professional photos, inspection fast-tracking. Brian left promising the first wave of interest by tomorrow evening. When the door closed behind him, silence filled the house, but not the heavy kind that had lived here since Ellen died. This was a different silence. Purposeful. Charged. Like the moment before a storm breaks. Later that night, Caitlin tried calling. I let it ring. Then ring again. On the third attempt, I answered, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted to hear how she would speak to me now, unaware that I had already severed her plans at the root. "Dad!" she exclaimed. "Where have you been?" "I've been calling all day." "Out," I said simply. "Oh, well, we were thinking about flying home early if you need anything." "Dad, listen, Jeremy and I have been talking, and we really think it would be good for you to have someone checking on you. Just part-time, you know? For safety." My stomach twisted, not with pain, but with clarity. They weren't checking on me. They were checking their investment. "I'm doing fine," I said politely. "Oh, well, okay," she said, clearly thrown off by my firmness. "We'll talk when we get home Monday, all right? Jeremy has some great ideas for the house." "The house is doing fine too," I said calmly. She paused, confused. "We'll talk soon, Dad. I guess." "Yes," I said. "We will." I hung up before she could brighten her tone or paste on her fake sugary affection. When the call ended, I stood in the doorway of the living room, looking at the empty space where Ellen used to sit. The hurt was still there, but something else had begun growing beside it. Pride. For the first time in years, I wasn't doing what was expected of me. I was doing what was right for me. And tomorrow, everything would accelerate. The next morning arrived with a kind of brightness that felt almost disrespectful to everything happening inside me. Sunshine poured through the kitchen windows, glinting off the granite countertops I'd polished the day I installed them. Ellen had stood beside me that night, touching the smooth stone with the same admiration she used on her favorite books. "Roy," she had whispered, "you always make things beautiful." Her voice echoed in my mind, steadying me, strengthening me, reminding me why I needed to do this, not out of spite, but because she would never have allowed our daughter to turn me into an obstacle to her comfort. By 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was Brian. "Morning, Mr. Bennett. I've got good news. I sent the preliminary listing teaser to my investor network last night. 3 groups responded already. 2 want to schedule walkthroughs today. 1 is preparing a cash offer sight unseen." "Sight unseen?" I asked, eyebrows lifting. "Your property's value speaks for itself," he replied with confidence. "If you're available, I'd like to bring the first group by at noon." "Come anytime," I said. I hung up and suddenly found myself walking through the house again, but this time with a new awareness. Every corner felt like a ticking clock counting down the end of an era. I didn't linger. lingering led to sentiment, and sentiment led to weakness. I simply made the house presentable, wiped down a few smudges, straightened a couple frames, and sat on the porch with coffee until Brian's car rolled into the driveway. He stepped out with two sharply dressed people, a man and a woman, both holding tablets. Investors, clearly. Their eyes scanned everything, calculating value the way soldiers scout terrain. They greeted me politely, but not warmly. They weren't here for me. They were here for the house. Brian led them inside, his voice smooth as polished oak. Original owner, custom craftsmanship, impeccable maintenance. You won't find a similar build from this era in such pristine condition. I listened from the hallway as they murmured approvingly. Staircase is solid. No creaks. Kitchen upgrades will hold value for another decade. Backyard is large enough for additions. Their words stung in ways I didn't expect. Ellen's garden, reduced to room for additions. The hardwood floors we'd laid by hand, now a bullet point on someone's investment checklist. But I reminded myself, this was necessary. This was liberation. When the investors left, Brian lingered. They're going to make an offer, he said confidently. But we have 2 more showings this afternoon. If I were you, I'd hold steady. Competition drives numbers up. I trust your judgment, I said. He nodded and headed out. I watched his car disappear down the street, then wandered inside, listening to the house settle around me like it knew its chapter was ending. Around 2 o'clock, another group came, this one younger, maybe late 30s, clearly flippers. They loved the structure, the craftsmanship, the bones, as they put it. They complimented the natural light and the timeless staircase design. But they spoke with enthusiasm rather than calculation. It felt less clinical. Still, I didn't let myself attach to any preference. Attachment had cost me too much already. 2 more showings followed. By evening, Brian called again. Mr. Bennett, all 4 groups are preparing offers. I'll have them on paper by tomorrow. And just so you know, one investor nearly begged me to let them submit early, but I insisted we wait to maximize your return. Thank you, I said quietly. That means a lot. I'll call you in the morning, he promised. After hanging up, I sat on the bay window seat Ellen loved so much. The evening light turned the walls golden, the same color they used to glow when she read her mystery novels here. I felt her presence in every beam of light, every soft shadow. I hope I'm doing this right, I whispered to her. I hope you wouldn't think I'm running away. But I wasn't running. I was reclaiming my voice. Taking back what I had lost the moment Caitlin called me a burden with such casual confidence. The next day brought a whirlwind. By noon, Brian arrived with a folder containing printed offers. 4 buyers. 4 numbers. All between $860,000 and $905,000. He placed the highest offer on top and tapped it lightly. Cash. No contingencies. Closing in 10 days. This is the one I recommend. I stared at the number. $905,000. My breath caught. I knew the house held value, but seeing it, the raw number, felt surreal. Ellen and I once scraped together $1,600 to fix the water heater. Now this home, our sanctuary, our sweat and sacrifice, was worth more than we had ever dreamed. Do we accept? Brian asked gently. I picked up the pen without hesitation. Yes. When the contract was signed, Brian shook my hand. You've made a good decision, Mr. Bennett. This will change your life. I think it already has, I murmured. He left, and I stood alone in the center of the living room. Everything looked the same, yet felt entirely different. The house wasn't mine anymore. Not spiritually. I had mentally stepped out of it the moment my daughter decided I didn't belong in the life I built. Later that afternoon, as I began sorting through drawers, I received a text from Caitlin. Hey Dad. Just checking in. Everything okay? Call me later. I stared at the message without replying. I didn't owe her an explanation. Not anymore. She hadn't checked on me out of love, only out of fear she might lose control over me, over the house, over the money. I spent the entire evening packing the essentials. Not everything, just what I needed to start a new life. Ellen's jewelry box, the worn-in flannel shirt she'd loved on me, photo albums, birth certificates, important documents, and the small wooden sun she bought me during our first trip together. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But instead I felt an odd sense of calm. Like my life was realigning itself after years of being tilted. Night came quietly. I turned off the lights one room at a time. Slowly. Deliberately. The house whispered memories as I walked through it. Laughter, arguments, holidays, birthdays. Ellen's soft singing. Caitlin's scraped knees and first day of school jitters. When I reached the front door, I paused. Rested my hand on the doorknob. Looked back one last time. "Thank you," I whispered to a lifetime that no longer belonged to me. Then I stepped outside, locked the door, and breathed fresh air like a new man. But the hardest part was still ahead. 3 days later, the closing paperwork was complete. The funds, nearly $900,000, hit my new bank account before noon. And just like that, I became a man my daughter would no longer recognize. I drove to a storage facility, rented a unit, and placed the packed boxes inside. I moved into a furnished apartment. Small, simple, but comfortable. A place where nothing reminded me of betrayal. Then I sat down at the new kitchen table, took out a sheet of paper, and wrote the note I'd been rehearsing in my head for days. The note they would find on the day their keys no longer worked. The note that would unravel their perfect plan and force them to face the truth they had built their life on. It took me all night. But when I finished, it was perfect. Sharp. Clear. Final. A father's last act of self-respect. The first act of his new life. The night before Caitlin and Jeremy were due to return, I barely slept. Not because of doubt or guilt, but because of anticipation. A strange, electric awareness buzzed beneath my skin, like the feeling right before a thunderstorm cracks open the sky. My furnished apartment, small, quiet, unfamiliar, felt like a cocoon I had stepped into only temporarily, a space where the old version of me was being shed piece by fragile piece. I placed Ellen's framed photo on the small dinner table. She smiled in that way she always did, gentle, patient, almost knowing. I touched the edge of the frame. "They're coming tomorrow," I whispered. "This time, they'll see me clearly." By morning, the sky had turned a pale steel gray, the kind that warned rain might fall by evening. I sat with coffee in hand, watching the world outside my window stretch awake. The camera I'd ordered, a tiny device disguised as a charger, sat plugged into the wall at my old house, exactly where I left it the day before. The app on my phone connected seamlessly, giving me a clear view of the front entryway. Motion detection. Audio capture. Live feed. All set. At noon, I drove to my old home one last time. The new locks gleamed silver in the sunlight. I stepped inside, the now empty rooms echoing with the ghost of a life no longer mine. Everything Caitlin and Jeremy owned had been neatly boxed and moved to the storage unit I rented. Clothes. Electronics. Books. Their expensive kitchen gadgets they used twice a year. Even their framed wedding portraits. All packed. All gone. The house was stripped of personal touches, leaving only memories embedded in the walls that no longer belonged to me. Standing in the doorway, I taped the envelope onto the inside of the front door. Eye level, directly in the line of sight the moment they stepped in. My neat handwriting curled gently across the surface. Caitlin and Jeremy. The words felt like a verdict. When I stepped back to look at the note in the glow of the afternoon light, a strange calm settled over me. Not triumph. Not vengeance. Something quieter, like the stillness after deciding to stop begging someone to understand your worth. I touched the frame of the door on my way out, closed it firmly, and locked it with a new key. The metal clicked cleanly. Final. Absolute. My truck rumbled softly as I pulled away. I didn't look back. At home, I spent the afternoon going through emails, adjusting my new accounts, organizing receipts. A man cannot start a new life in chaos. Ellen taught me that. At 5:08 p.m., the app on my phone chimed. Motion detected. My pulse quickened, but I kept my breathing steady as I opened the app. On the screen, a black SUV pulled into the driveway, the same one Caitlin always insisted Jeremy buy because she liked how it made a statement. They both got out. Caitlin looked exhausted from travel, hair up in a rushed bun. Jeremy buttoned his jacket as he walked, probably wanting to appear in control. I watched from miles away as they rolled their suitcases toward the house, toward the life they believed they were returning to. Caitlin fished out her keys. Inserted the first one. Twisted. The lock didn't budge. Her eyebrows pinched. She tried again. Then again, this time harder. The metal scraped uselessly. She pulled the key back and stared at it as if it had betrayed her. "That's strange," she murmured. Jeremy stepped up, annoyance flaring across his face. "Let me try." He jiggled the key with far more force than necessary. The lock remained unmoving, cold, indifferent to his frustration. "The back," he snapped. "Try the back door." She hurried around the side of the house, out of the camera's view momentarily, while Jeremy stayed at the front, pacing. When she returned moments later, her voice was thin and edged with rising panic. "It's locked too. And the garage keypad won't open." Jeremy stared at the door, realization creeping in like a slow, sickening tide. Someone changed the locks. "Why would anyone do that?" she demanded, voice sharp. "Dad wouldn't even know how to call a locksmith." I exhaled a humorless laugh. She still saw me as helpless, as incapable, as anything but a man who had built his entire life from the ground up. On screen, Caitlin's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "I'm calling him." My phone rang instantly. I declined the call. She stared at her screen, baffled. "He didn't answer." "Try again," Jeremy insisted. She did. Twice. 5 times. I declined every call. Her voice wavered. "Jeremy, something is wrong." Finally, Jeremy scanned the area and noticed the envelope on the inside of the front door window. He pointed sharply. "What's that?" Caitlin stepped closer, squinting. Her breath fogged the glass. It's a note." "Open it," Jeremy ordered. She scrambled for the window I had intentionally left unlatched. She lifted herself through with Jeremy pushing her. The camera captured only her feet dangling briefly before she disappeared inside. A moment later, the front door swung open from within, revealing her pale and shaken face. She snatched the envelope off the door and ripped it open. Jeremy entered behind her. Their eyes scanned the letter, and I watched their world fall apart. Caitlin's face crumpled mid-sentence, her voice cracking. "Dad sold the house for $890,000. Jeremy's voice was nothing more than a stunned whisper. He moved out. He moved out and took everything." Caitlin reread parts of the note aloud, her voice trembling violently. "You planned to put me in a nursing home. You wanted to sell the house you didn't pay for. The money is mine. Your belongings are at a storage unit. You have 30 days. She stopped reading, breath hitching, tears welling. "This isn't real," she whispered. "He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't." Jeremy snatched the paper, eyes racing over every word. "This old man screwed us." His voice cracked into something dark and ugly. "He actually screwed us. He's our father," she yelled. "No," Jeremy said coldly. "He was your father. Mine by marriage. And we treated him well until he..." "Until he what?" she snapped, turning on him like a wounded animal. "Until he stopped being profitable for you?" Jeremy bristled. "Don't twist this. You said he was declining. You said he was unsafe. You're the one who wanted this." "I didn't want to lose my home," she cried. "You said we'd get money from the sale. You pushed for Boulder. You..." "Stop acting innocent. You didn't object. You didn't complain. You went along with everything." Their voices grew louder, harsher, cutting each other open with blame and panic. The living room filled with their unraveling. Their dream life had evaporated in a single sheet of paper. Caitlin sank onto the floor, sobbing. "Where is he? How could he do this to me?" The same question echoed in my head from the night I overheard her. How could she do that to me? Jeremy paced like a caged animal. "We need a lawyer." "With what money?" she snapped. "We're broke. And he has it all. It's his house," Jeremy spit bitterly. "Legally, he was within his rights." "He abandoned us," she whispered. Those words, so painfully ironic, twisted my gut. I watched them crumble. I watched the realization dawn on them that the man they had dismissed as weak was, in fact, the only stability they ever had. Finally, Caitlin pulled out her phone, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She dialed me. I let it ring. Then the notification appeared, voicemail received. I didn't listen to it. I set the phone down on the table beside Ellen's photo, turned off the camera feed, and leaned back in my chair, letting the silence wash over me. The moment was not joyful, nor triumphant. It was simply honest. For the first time in years, I felt like a man standing in his own life again. The weight of betrayal had fallen away. And all that remained was clarity. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't confused. I wasn't an obligation. I was free. The voicemail Caitlin left that night sat unread on my phone like a stone I refused to pick up. I didn't want to hear her cry, didn't want to hear her desperation, not yet. Maybe a part of me feared I'd soften if I let her voice in. Maybe another part wanted her to sit with the reality of what she'd nearly done to me, reality stripped of excuses, stripped of the warm tone she used whenever she wanted something. By the time I finally climbed into bed in my modest new apartment, exhaustion settled into my bones like cooling steel. But sleep didn't come. I lay there in the dark staring at the ceiling, the quiet hum of the air conditioner filling the emptiness Ellen used to occupy with her gentle breathing. I reached out and touched the empty pillow beside me. "Ellen, I hope I've done right," I whispered into the dark. Morning light found me already awake. I made coffee, instant, not the rich brew Ellen used to make, and sat at my small table scrolling through emails. Nothing from Caitlin. Nothing from Jeremy. Only silence. But the silence didn't last long. At 9:42 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again, rapid fire. 5 calls in a row. Then a text. "Dad, please. We need to talk." I stared at the message without answering. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I slipped the phone face down on the table and walked out into the crisp morning air. I headed toward Brews and Views, the little coffee shop I'd discovered. The barista, Sarah, spotted me when I walked in. "Morning, Mr. H. You look like you've got a lot on your mind." I managed a smile. "Something like that." She handed me a fresh cup on the house. "This one's for good luck." Her kindness made my throat tighten unexpectedly. Kindness felt foreign, unpredictable, a sharp contrast to the manipulation I'd lived under for so many years. Outside, I sat beneath the small patio umbrella and watched people mill about, laughing, talking, living simple lives unburdened by betrayal. For the first time since selling the house, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost, but also everything I'd reclaimed. A message pinged on my phone again. "Dad, please pick up. We don't know what to do. Please call me." Followed by another. "We can fix this. Just talk to me." And another. "I'm sorry. I swear I didn't mean what you heard." That one lingered longer in my chest. I closed my eyes, letting the cool breeze brush across my face. Apology or manipulation? Intent or desperation? The line blurred when it came to Caitlin. Later that afternoon, I returned to my apartment and finally played the voicemail she'd left the night before. Her voice hit me like a blow. "Dad, I don't understand why you did this. Please call me back. Please. We came home and everything's gone. Just tell me where you are. Tell me you're okay. I'm scared. I didn't mean any of what you think. I love you." She sounded small. Frightened. For a brief moment, guilt flickered through me. Not because I had sold the house. Not because I had walked away. But because I had once held that little girl when she scraped her knee, wiped her tears, told her everything would be okay, and now she was crying again, and I wasn't answering. But then I remembered that same girl laughing with her husband about the nursing home. Calling me a burden. A problem to solve. Love doesn't excuse cruelty. I deleted the voicemail. That evening, as the sun dipped behind Denver's rooftops, my doorbell rang. Nobody knew where I lived. My heart kicked hard in my chest. I approached the door cautiously, looking through the peephole. Caitlin. Her eyes were red, face pale, hair tangled from stress or rushing or both. She looked fragile. Younger than her 36 years. Like a child standing outside the principal's office waiting for punishment. "Dad," she whispered through the door. "Dad, I know you're there. Please." I closed my eyes. The universe wasn't giving me a moment more. I unlocked the door. She stepped inside before I even said a word, practically collapsing onto the small couch beside the window. When she looked up at me, the fracture lines in her expression were deep and real. "I didn't know where else to go," she said softly. "Jeremy, he's furious. He blames me for everything." I stood across from her, arms crossed, waiting. She stared at her hands, fingers twisting as if searching for the right shape for an apology. "What you heard," she began, voice breaking, "it wasn't what I meant." "It was exactly what you meant," I said gently but firmly. She flinched. "I was scared," she whispered. "You told me you left the stove on. You told me you fell in the kitchen. I panicked. I didn't want to put you in a nursing home, Dad." Jeremy pushed it. "He said it was the safest thing." "He also said I was a burden," I reminded her. She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. I believed you when you said you loved me," I said. "I believed you when you said you'd take care of me. But then I listened to the rest of that call, Caitlin. You weren't scared. You were planning. You were laughing." She crumpled. "I was wrong. I know that. But selling the house, that was everything. That was my childhood. That was Mom." "No," I said quietly. "Your mother was never tied to that house. She was tied to us. To love. To compassion. And she would never have chosen money over family." Tears streamed down her face. "I miss Mom," she whispered. "So do I said, softening. "Every day." She reached for my hand instinctively, the way she used to when she was little. But I didn't move to meet it. The space between our palms felt wider than the distance between two lives. "Dad," she whispered, "where am I supposed to go? Jeremy says it's my fault we have no place to live." "He's right," I said plainly. "It is your fault." She recoiled like I'd struck her. "I planned everything," I continued. "I planned my new life. Planned the sale. Planned the storage. Planned the locks. Planned the camera. Everything, down to the moment you walked through that door." Her breath caught. "You watched us." "Yes. And you still didn't call me?" "No." She hugged herself, shaking. "I don't know what to do. I don't know how we're going to make it. Jeremy lost his job. I don't make enough to survive like this." "You will survive," I said. "But you will survive because you learn, not because I rescue you." "Are you saying you won't help me?" "I'm saying," I answered slowly, "that I already helped you for 36 years. You just don't know it anymore." Silence stretched. Then Caitlin's voice cracked into something raw. "I don't want you to die alone, Dad." Tears fell freely now. "I don't want us to end like this." She looked up with red, tired eyes, searching my face for something I wasn't sure I could give. "Can we fix this?" she pleaded. "Can we start over?" I took a deep breath and sat across from her. "That depends on one thing," I said. "You must accept that the house is gone. The money is mine. My independence is non-negotiable. And you will never again treat me as a burden." She nodded quickly. "I won't. I swear. And you must build your life without depending on me. Without expecting my wallet to fix your mistakes." She hesitated, then nodded again. "Okay. And if Jeremy ever speaks about putting me in a nursing home again," I said quietly, "I will walk out of your life completely." Her breath hitched. "I understand." I studied her trembling face, the sincerity in her voice, the fear in her eyes. She looked stripped down to the truth. No manipulation, no performance. For the first time in a long time, she looked like my daughter again. I finally extended my hand. She grabbed it like a lifeline, sobbing into her palms. "I'm sorry," she whispered again and again. "I'm so sorry." I nodded, but inside, I knew this wasn't forgiveness. It was the beginning of something new. Something fragile. Something that had to be earned, not inherited. As she cried quietly on the couch, I looked at Ellen's photo on the nightstand. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt hope, not for what we had lost, but for what still might be rebuilt. Caitlin stayed on my couch for nearly an hour after her tears finally slowed, staring at the small coffee table as if she expected the wood grain to offer her answers. The sun had drifted lower, throwing long shadows across the apartment walls, turning the room a soft amber. She wiped her cheeks one last time, her eyes swollen but clearer. "I should go," she whispered, her voice fragile as paper. "Jeremy will be wondering where I am." She stood slowly, looking around my modest apartment with a mix of sadness and curiosity. She traced the frame of Ellen's photo gently with her fingertip. "Mom would have handled all of this better than I did." "No," I said softly. "She just would have seen it sooner." Caitlin nodded, guilt threading through her features. When she stepped toward me to hug me goodbye, she stopped just short, waiting for my permission. I opened my arms, and she collapsed into them like the girl I used to carry to bed after she fell asleep in front of the TV. For the first time in a long time, the embrace felt real, not like an expectation, not like a performance, but like a daughter reaching for her father. "I'll call you tomorrow," she whispered. "You can," I answered. "But this time, we'll build things differently." She nodded and slipped out the door. When the apartment fell silent again, I felt something shift, as if the air had lightened but the past still hovered close. I walked to the window and watched her get into her car. She wiped her face once more, started the engine, and drove away. The red taillights vanished into the evening. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. For the next few days, Caitlin called, not every hour like before, but once each morning. Her tone was different. Not needy. Not desperate. Just steady. She talked about looking for temporary housing, about trying to secure a short-term rental. Denver's prices shocked her. She told me Jeremy had slept on the couch at a friend's place after an explosive argument. "He said I ruined our future," she murmured one morning, voice trembling. "Your future wasn't built on a house I paid for," I said gently. "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." She started spending afternoons at the library looking for new jobs, places she could apply on her own merit instead of Jeremy's connections. For the first time in years, she was seeing the world without leaning on someone else's wallet. Meanwhile, I was building my own new routines. Morning coffee at Brews and Views. Walks through the senior community where groups gathered on benches to exchange jokes and crossword puzzles. Golf lessons at the small course behind Sunset Manor, something Ellen had always wanted us to try together. I wasn't lonely. For the first time since she passed, I felt myself living rather than existing. But life, even renewed life, has a way of sending one more test. On the fourth day after Caitlin visited me, my apartment buzzer rang again. This time, when I looked through the peephole, it wasn't Caitlin. It was Jeremy. His jaw was tight, hair unkempt, tie loosened as if he'd either stormed out or been thrown out somewhere. His eyes, usually calculating and composed, were ringed with sleepless anger. I opened the door only a few inches, keeping the chain locked. "What do you want, Jeremy?" He forced a tight smile. "Just want to talk. Man to man." "We've done that," I said. "And you lied." "I didn't lie." His tone sharpened. "I just didn't expect you to overreact." Overreact. I stared hard at him. This man had planned to exile me for profit and now stood here like I'd inconvenienced him by protecting myself. "You need to leave," I said. "Please," he hissed, his fake politeness fraying. "Just a minute." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and unlatched the chain. Jeremy stepped in as if he owned the place, scanning the apartment with a sneer. "This is where you're staying," he scoffed. "This place is small." "It's mine," I said simply. "That's more than you can say." His nostrils flared. "Look, Roy. I'm willing to forgive what you did." "What I did?" A bitter laugh rose inside me. "Jeremy, you tried to steal my house. We were trying to help you. You were trying to help yourselves." He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at me with the same analytical stare he probably used in his old financial job, weighing leverage, power, angles. "Here's the truth," he finally said. "Caitlin is falling apart. She's got no stability without you. I'm trying to hold things together, but I can't do it if you're making rash decisions." "This was my decision," I said quietly. "And it wasn't rash." "You betrayed us," he snapped. "No," I said. I woke up. His jaw tightened so hard I could hear his teeth grind. "You owe her something," he hissed. "She's your daughter. And she owes me respect," I replied. His eyes narrowed with a kind of disdain only entitled men master. "You're going to give her part of that money," he said flatly. "You're going to help her get back on her feet. You're going to—" "No," I said. He blinked. "What?" "No," I repeated calmly. "I'm not giving you anything. And you don't get to tell me what to do anymore." Jeremy took a step forward, puffing himself up, trying to intimidate me. It might have worked once. It didn't now. "You think you've won," he spat. "You think you're noble? You humiliated us. You destroyed Caitlin emotionally. You destroyed our marriage." I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped funding the illusion you built around your life." Jeremy's face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he said. "You'll regret this." "No," I said, opening the door wide. "But you might." He glared at me, chest heaving, before storming out. I closed the door calmly behind him and reattached the chain. My phone buzzed 10 minutes later. "Dad, I'm sorry. Jeremy just told me he came to talk to you. I didn't know he would. Please don't shut me out. I want to be better. I will be better." Her words were tentative, fragile. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the window and looked out into the fading evening. The city lights flickered to life like stars rising in reverse. Somewhere out there, my daughter was learning how to stand without leaning on the wrong people. My heart ached, but not with pain. With hope. The next morning, Caitlin came alone. She didn't knock hard or act dramatic. She just stood quietly at my door, holding 2 coffees from Brews and Views. One for her. One for me. She handed it to me without saying a word. We sat at the small table, the same one where Ellen's photo rested, the same table where I'd first built this new life. "I asked Jeremy to leave," she said finally. "At least for now. I need to figure out who I am without him making decisions for me." I nodded. "That's a good start." She held her coffee tightly. "Dad, I don't want your money. I don't want the house. I don't want anything except another chance to be the daughter you deserve." I studied her face, the sincerity, the broken edges, the quiet strength just beginning to emerge. For the first time in far too long, I didn't see entitlement or expectation. I saw growth. I saw humility. I saw the girl Ellen and I raised. "You can have that chance," I said softly. "But we're taking it slow. And trust needs to be earned." She nodded, tears gathering but not falling. "I know." And for the first time since the phone call that shattered everything, I reached across the table and held my daughter's hand. Later, when she left, I stood by the window watching her walk to her car. Not with fear, not with anger, but with quiet pride. She would rebuild. And so would I. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the small balcony of my apartment. The air was cool, the sky painted in dusk blues and purples. I raised my glass toward the open sky. "To you, Ellen," I whispered. "I kept my promise. I finally took care of myself." And somewhere deep inside the quiet, I felt her warmth again. Not in the house. Not in the things. But in the strength she helped build in me, the strength I finally remembered how to use. The wine tasted like freedom. The night tasted like peace. And my future, mine and mine alone, finally felt wide open.